When you hear the word influence, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Is it the loudest person in the room? The one who's always got the answers? The one who just takes charge? Well, today, we're going to dive into a different idea. One that suggests real, lasting influence might actually be the complete opposite. Okay, let's get right into it. We're going to start in the world of professional tennis. This is a place that's famous for these huge rivalries and fiery personalities. The year is 1980, and John McEnroe, who's already got this reputation for his on-court tantrums, is in the middle of a super tense match and, well, he's doing what he does best, flinging his racket and yelling at the official. The score is 5-5 in the final set. The pressure is just immense. And right at that moment, his rival, Bjorn Borg, does something nobody saw coming. He doesn't fight back, he doesn't try to get under his skin. He just walks over, puts an arm around McEnroe, and says a few quiet words of reassurance. And without one small gesture, poof, McEnroe's rage just melted away. It completely changed the entire match. And that incredible moment just makes you wonder, right? We are so used to thinking that influence is all about force, about having the loudest voice. But what if the most effective way to change minds, to change outcomes, is actually quiet? So that leads us right into our first big idea. We often think that influencing means being the answer guy, the one who swoops in to fix everything. But what we're going to see is that this forceful approach, it backfires, big time. So take this story of a manager who, thinking they were being helpful, just completely took over a project from an employee who was kind of struggling. The manager solved the problem, got it done, and probably thought, hey, great, I helped. But the employee, well, they didn't see it that way at all. That was the actual feedback during the performance review. Ouch. So the crucial point here is, seizing control wasn't seen as helpful, it was humiliating. Forceful influence often ends up demotivating people instead of inspiring them. Okay, so if force fails, what's the alternative? To really get it, we need to completely reframe how we see the world, shifting from a Western perspective to a more Eastern one. Now, this slide is my favorite part because of the metaphor. A typical Western worldview sees the world as a bunch of separate, distinct objects, kind of like pistachios and ice cream. You can pick them out, analyze them, try to control them. But an Eastern worldview sees the whole system, the fields, the forces, the relationships. It sees the ice cream itself. And this is a massive shift in thinking. It's moving from trying to control individual pistachios to understanding the ice cream, that whole web of conditions and relationships that creates the situation in the first place. Let's see how this actually plays out in the real world. Now, that whole ice cream thing can seem a little abstract, so let's ground it with a really powerful story. It's all about a tiny choice a manager made, a choice between focusing on cost or focusing on care. So the author is taking home this huge, really expensive roll of Mylar flip charts to do some proofreading overnight. It's company property and it's super valuable. As her boss, Mona, is handing them over, she starts to give a warning. The author is just bracing herself for the obvious lecture, don't damage the expensive materials. But that's not what Mona said. Instead of focusing on the pistachio, the expensive object, she focused on the ice cream, the relationship, the well-being of her employee. It was this tiny moment of human kindness that, as the author says, changed everything. It was a key reason she stayed at that company for over 2 decades. Wow. Okay, that's great for friendly offices, but what about hostile situations? Can quiet influence really work when you're facing an adversary? The answer is yes, and it can actually turn them into an ally. The scene is a high-stakes client meeting. A salesperson named Joe is there while his colleague is presenting their work. And all of a sudden, one of the clients, a partner we'll call Frank, just starts tearing into the presentation, jabbing his pen, trashing everything they've done. It's incredibly aggressive. So instead of getting defensive or fighting back, Joe does something remarkable. First, he just absorbs the attack. He just listens. Then, and this is the genius part, he immediately finds one single tiny point in Frank's angry rant that he can agree with. That tiny point of agreement instantly changes the dynamic, and it turns Frank's angry monologue into a collaborative dialogue. As Joe explained later, the whole situation was diffused in a moment. By just walking alongside his adversary, just for a second, he showed him he was listening. And that's all it took to turn an attack into a negotiation. So, we've seen quiet influence on a tennis court, in an office, and even in a hostile meeting. But here's the final and maybe the most important point. This kind of power isn't reserved for CEOs or gurus or master negotiators. It's available to absolutely everyone. Our final story is about a man named Campbell. He was hired as an assistant security guard for the night shift. He didn't have a degree, he didn't speak English, but within just a few weeks, he had completely transformed the culture of the entire office. People started staying late, just because, with Campbell around, everything worked better. He learned to operate every machine, he could fix anything that broke, and he knew where everyone was. And when he eventually moved to the daytime switchboard, he became famous for answering every single call on the second ring. And his reason? He just instinctively understood the purpose of the whole business. His CEO was just blown away. He realized the crucial lesson here. Campbell's incredible influence didn't come from a new phone system or some fancy strategy or any formal authority. It came from his presence. It came from who he was as a person. He inspired people just by being there. And that really brings us to our final thought. It's clear that the most profound influence we have doesn't come from our title or how loud we are or how forceful we are. It comes from our ability to see the whole ice cream, not just the pistachios. It comes from choosing care over cost and from walking with our adversaries. It really just comes from our own humanity. So the only question left is, who will you choose to be?